Alright, back with my 2004 Trailblazer. If you guys watched the last video, you guys know what the deal was. There's no keys in minty green, but yet this stuff stays on. Now normally when I would do a Trailblazer or any kind of GM that has battery disconnect problems, I'd use my low amp probe here, but in the spirit of DIY, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. Be aware that if you do disconnect the battery on one of these trucks, there's a probability of some shit not going right. There are side effects. So the first thing I want to do, I want to get the negative battery terminal off of this thing. I want the Trailblazer to think that the doors are actually closed even though they're not going to be. So I'm going to take Mr. Pick tool here. I'm going to flick that latch till it does a click click. So to get these door latches unstuck, because sometimes you got to pull on the handle and kind of help it get over at the same time. Sometimes they won't recoil back on their own. I have to hook my multimeter up in between the negative of the battery and the negative battery terminal. Got a couple of GM side post battery things. I prefer this guy right here just because he's bigger. Take Mr. Adjustable Wrench. So I'm going to take these little squeezy things and clip him right onto the new battery post. This just gives me something I can hook a regular alligator clip leads up to. So I'm pushing on this bolt and I'm turning the other side as I'm pushing it. I was actually able to wrestle the little terminal out of that. I can slide this cover right off. I can get a good bite on the negative terminal itself. Before I hook my multimeter up to this thing, I want to hook just a regular jumper lead on it. I'll go ahead on my Fluke 77, pull this guy out of volts. I'm going to plug him into the 10 amps. I want to take the negative, go right on the post. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the little jumper lead off of the negative terminal. This is why we start on the 10 amp scale. The Trailblazer's not running, so all of the juice is coming from the battery right now. So 2.8 amps is running through that battery even with the truck off and the key out. So one thing to consider on these Trailblazers, there's only 3 wires that come off of this positive terminal of the battery. One goes to the starter, one goes to the alternator, and one comes up to this front fuse box. Look at that, no fuses to move out of the way. Get to this shit fast and easy. So yeah, power comes in, powers up this fuse box. It jumps over the mega fuse. This wire will run all the way back to the rear fuse box underneath the driver's side rear seat. You know, with the exception of aftermarket things being installed in the vehicle, we can usually isolate shit just from the fuse boxes. Now we do have an advantage here because we know that the cluster stays on. All right, so since the cluster is what's staying on, let's just see what it takes to get this thing to turn on. Constant power is what's on fuse 24. Switched power, fuse 22. So if our cluster is what's causing the draw, pulling these fuses should take away the draw and turn the cluster off. Let's pull the IPC/DIC fuse. It's fuse 24. 24 should be this guy right here. Alright, so the cluster did turn off, but we're still at like 2 amps. I'm going to put this guy back in here. We're going to try fuse number 22, which is the ignition E fuse. This one should be our 22. Nothing changed. So now we're going to try our big ignition fuses. So it'd be this guy right here. That's our ignition A fuse. So with ignition A out and giving the truck a couple seconds to time out, the draw is now down to well within specifications. Something on this ignition A circuit is what's going on here. I'm just going to hook the battery back up now. Since this guy goes right to the ignition switch itself, we're gonna go inside the car. So looking underneath the driver's side of the dash, we've got 2 screws. Should be 7 mils we gotta pop out. There's supposed to be a screw right there, and there's supposed to be one under here too. They're both missing. Your truck should have 2 screws there. And then we've got 2 up here we've also got to take off. If you look way back there, you're going to see a couple 10 mil nuts. Got 2 on each side. I'm going to go ahead and pop them out. Because really what we got to get to is this guy right here. I mean, we probably could do our testing with that cover on, but it's going to be a lot easier with it off. This guy right here is connector 201. He's a pretty popular guy. You can get a lot of circuits for the column right there at C201. But this is what we're interested in, because our ignition A fuse is causing a draw. Something that comes off of the ignition A fuse is causing it. Now I could just go and do the ones that I need, but I'm just going to show you guys the whole shit right here. With the key off, none of these circuits should have 12 volts on them. So my meter's set to volts. I'm grounded up there on the little Studley B6. Showing no voltage. C6, no voltage. C5, we're showing 12 volts on C5 with the key off. Well, we're going to skip ahead. I hope you guys can see this, but on this bottom row and go in there, 0 volts. Now if we were just doing ignition switch testing, we could actually just test all these right now. So back probing ignition 3. Turn the key to run. Now we got our 12 volts. Depending on which position the key's in, you're going to get different readings, but for the most part, with the key in run or on, your accessory up here on B6 should have 12 volts. Your ignition 1 on C6 should have 12 volts. And your ignition 2, they call it ignition 0, but I call it ignition 2 just because of the remote starts. So you've got accessory, ignition 1, ignition 2, and all the way down here, ignition 3. Now if you come up here to this fat wire, this yellow wire, this is actually the crank wire. This is the one that sends the PCM a signal. Now I went ahead and I pulled out the starter relay, but I just want to show you, if I back probe pin C1, which is the big fat yellow wire. Now if I turn it to crank, that's at 12 volts. Now I was actually just holding it in crank, and again with the relay pulled out, the car's not going to crank. Those are our 5 ignition switch outputs. Spin him off. In this case, ignition 2, also known as ignition 0, stays at 12 volts with the key off. That's what's causing our battery drain. So really the only thing we can do is get to the ignition switch, and that's coming up next. So I was just editing the video from last weekend, and thinking about things, I had to try something, and I just want to show you guys what I did. I hooked this thing up so I could play around with it, and what I noticed was no matter what I did, I couldn't get just the battery light and the prndl light to come on. As a matter of fact, no matter what I did, I couldn't even come close. It was an all or nothing deal. I mean, this is weird. I can't duplicate this on the workbench. So the question is, what can be going wrong in Minty Green that just makes only the battery light and the prndl message come on? Alright, so who does this connector belong to? Well, damn it, I just repinned it to work in the Trailblazer, so now it won't work in the Tahoe. Fuck. Alright, so welcome to a very special edition of Memoirs of a Mechanic on Road Test. I'm driving this 2000 Silverado. We don't want to see that ABS light glowing anymore, so we'll just put some tape on the dash. That shit still happens in 2019. Whatever. This was really cool because I just did the whole brake line service thing on this thing. You know, where you replace basically every brake line on the fucking truck. And went to do automated bleed, and you couldn't do it if there was any trouble codes in the system, which there were. I was able to fool the computer into thinking it was all good in the hood, was able to do my automated bleed, so now I'm just out on a road test. But fuck this truck. Oh, this angle will work. Got a big shifter right near my face, but it's okay. Doing things a little bit different. This is usually the part of the video where I just ramble on about just whatever while I'm out just going through the day-to-day shit at the gerb. This whole 2004 Trailblazer deal that's been going on probably the last 2 or 3 videos now. It's just what I needed in life, you know what I mean? A car that I can just fuck with, take apart, test shit with no time restrictions or anything. The only downside is that where this truck is located at, there's no internet. I mean, it's out in the sticks. So when I go and work on this car, I don't have information right at my fingertips. Last week with the battery drain, like, I didn't have nothing. I knew that the cluster had 2 fuses for it. And in all honesty, I really thought that pulling those 2 fuses was going to fix the problem. And I just had a fucked up cluster. Anyway, you can look around. There's been tons of complaints about the Trailblazer clusters with the battery light that stays on. And it's actually an internal cluster fault. Only the battery light will stay on. In fact, it'll stay on when the truck's running. When it's off, it'll be on very dimly. Apparently there's a fault in the logic of the cluster. So I really felt that pulling those 2 fuses was going to eliminate obviously turn the cluster off, and it would eliminate the draw. And it didn't. So one note I want to make, that's why whenever I have something with shit staying on with the key off, I make it a habit to hook a multimeter up. I know a lot of stupid motherfuckers out there that would have pulled the fuses for the cluster, saw that the cluster turned off and said, well, that's the problem right there. $700 later, because they're going to charge Diag and labor and whatever, mark up the price of the cluster, you'll be back with the same symptom. Yeah, I had no service information with me. I didn't think I need my service manual for my 03. Most of the stuff would work with my 04, but not all of it. So I kind of went and tackled that thing blindly. A lot more fuses were pulled and shit like that. There was more to it than it looks on the video. But if I make the video really long and detailed, people complain. If I make the video short and not enough information, then I complain. So I'm trying to satisfy everybody, which it ain't gonna happen. Damn, we're already 8 minutes into this bitch. Zoinks. Not cool. Gonna be a lot of editing on my part tonight, but you know what, it's all worth it. Get to show you guys a lot more shit on these Trailblazers, because as you're gonna see, every time I do something on mini green that's kind of basic, I'll show you why I couldn't show it on my 03. I gotta put something cool in here. This is so fucking, like, this is not what I do on a road test. So we'll cut to the real memoirs of the mechanic on a road test. Alright, what's up, party people? Oh, there's like some dude's picture like stashed in the cluster, but take my word for it, it's a 14 Focus. Nothing to see here except the fucking chapstick. Oh, you dumbass, you were so good until the fucking thing moved. What if I like wedged the chapstick? Oh fuck, I dropped the chapstick. Oh no. Where did the chapstick go? God, it's like it fell into a void in the seat. I don't want to get accused of stealing the chapstick. Hang tight. Disaster avoided. Can you imagine being in the unemployment office? What happened at your last job? Well, I got fired. Customer said I stole his chapstick, but in reality, I was just using the chapstick to prop my cell phone up so I could record myself while driving, while on a road test. Sure, that would go over very well. Anyway, I want to talk to you guys about chapstick. I'll never wear chapstick. I mean, I will if there's a problem with my lips. But see, I'm not that dude. I'm not that guy that sees like the owner of the company or the owner's like, I was just driving the owner of the company's dad's truck just like a couple minutes ago. I'm not gonna like fucking kiss somebody's ass because of who they are. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the owner of my work might come in and motherfuckers will put their chapstick on. Hey, Mr. I can't say his real name. Hey, Mr. X, you're looking good. Or, hey, Mr. X, I closed that deal. Give me fist bump or whatever the fuck you guys do. You know what I mean? I keep it real. I'm like, sup? You know what I mean? What do you want from me? You know? I try my very best to be as professional as I can be. And you guys are probably like, this fucking guy. This is the same guy that fucking showed two plush pals having sex on YouTube. You know? What's professional about that? Or like the time my wife said, professional? You used to call them up and fart into the phone. I did. I would call my work during the weekend, and whenever the answer machine would come on, I would fart into the phone. I'd go in on Monday morning, and when I would go up front to clock in, they would be listening to the messages. I would hear that shit. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. They were not amused. Remember back in the day, you could like *66 or *67 and block your phone number? That was the shit back in the day. Back to the whole reason for making this thing, you know what I'm saying? I'll be fucking hopefully cremated. That's what I want to happen to me when I finally do die. I just want to be known as somebody that didn't kiss nobody's ass. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how pathetic does your life have to be that you see somebody with a little bit of money and you're like, oh, fucking head over heels, man crushing in love with them. Like, man, you looking good, Mr. X. I got this new cherry lip balm. Let me plant one on your ass for you. I can just suck it fat. Don't get it twisted. It's not like I'm hating somebody that has anything more than I do. I don't really care. Like, I've known people that would run through a burning building to work on that Silverado that I just put brake lines on. You know what I'm saying? Outside of editing this footage tonight, the one I just did driving the Silverado, I'll probably never think about that truck ever again. No chapstick required.